checks and balances. Myself included, I have no idea what tint I have. I have no idea if I'm to remove the tint. My sister, for instance, bought a car with a fairly dark tint that she bought from the manufacturers. Who is to stand the bill? Do we put things in place that the manufacturer, if they bring down vehicles with tint that is beyond the 70 or 75%, are they liable for fitting the bill to replace the tint? How do I know what I have? How do the honorable members in here know what I have? Will there be provision by the licensing authority that you could take your vehicle in and have it assessed for free, of course? These are some of the things. I read something in the legislation that is as clear as mud for the average Barbadian on the whole, and I remember the honorable member for the opposition said that some of us stand at the gates of legal interpretation. I am one of the members at the gates. For instance, 51B, beginning to read, it says the visible light transmission in respect of the windscreens and windows of a motor vehicle shall not be less than 25% in the case of any window situated on any side of the forward of the vertical plane immediately behind the driver's seat back in its nearmost and upright position. I have no idea what that says. And I think we have to be clear on what we are telling the public in terms of that. I want to speak on the fees. Mr. Speaker, I think $500 with a $10 fine for every day you fail to pay the penalty is a little bit harsh. One, you have to pay for removing the tint. Two, you have to, if you choose to replace the tint, you have to pay to replace the tint. And I checked the legislation with a little help on the bill to amend the drug abuse. And we are given a penalty of $200 for those of us, not us, those of them who are caught with 14 grams or less of marijuana. I cannot see the balance. $500 if you have tint that is not allowed, or $200 for smoking a spliff, or whatever the quantity is, 14 grams. It has to be a balance when we think about legislation and penalties. This does not ring true for me. Is it a thought for implementing the penalty in an incremental basis, where if you get caught the first time is X amount, lower than 500 the second, and so on? But I think $500 with a $10 a day penalty is far too exorbitant, and it would be helpful, and I wish that that could be relooked to lower it, if anything. When something, I think marijuana, that probably has a little more, to me, is a little more concerning than the actual tint in terms of health reasons, in terms of related to crime, in terms of a lot of things. And I think if we're gonna push this amendment through, it has to be a balance with what the penalties are. The honorable member that brought it, the amendments, spoke about on the medical side of it, where there are a few diseases that he mentioned, where there will be allowances for those individuals to have a greater tint. I don't know a lot about medicine, but what I do know is that some of these skin diseases is a matter of the ultraviolet light and not necessarily the tint. In other words, you can have a clear covering that keeps out ultraviolet light A, B, and sometimes C. So that is not really an excuse for somebody to have an exemption. Apart from that, a doctor or dermatologist would tell a patient wear a hat, wear sunscreen, wear protective clothing. We all know that the temperatures have risen. The honorable member yes, we know who we mean, that's interested in the environment, it's slipping me now, will tell you that we have risen, yes, the honorable member, that we have Christchurch, thank you, West Central, will tell you that the temperatures worldwide have risen, I think, 1 or 2 degrees. And heat is really a concern. What the tint does allow, though, is for cooling of the vehicle, or should I say, not overheating of the vehicle. And that is also important for health reasons. So I don't really necessarily agree that putting a tint on a vehicle or allowing those with certain diseases to have a tint is actually ringing through here, because it really doesn't, although I'm sure they're grateful for it. And as I said, I'm going to be short. I agree, we have other things to worry about, like the breathalyzer test, as the honorable member for St. Michael South Central spoke about. The public, all quarters of the public, the medicinal part, the general public, the victims of accidents, we're all waiting on the breathalyzer. I don't know if any money that it cost to do the meters was spent, but we're all waiting on that to be enacted. In terms, when I say enacted, put into practice so that we could prevent some of these accidents and these deaths and so on that are caused by alcohol use and abuse. So I am not sure if how far the taint will go in tackling crime. And finally, I think we need to face crime head on. I have some suggestions. I don't have a lot. I don't really know the answers. But I remember way back when, maybe not so long ago, I had a pleasant conversation with the Right Honourable Owen Arthur, just after I gave my perspectives on the blocks and the gangs and so on that exist in Barbados, in my view. And he brought up Jamaica, for instance, and said one of the issues with Jamaica is that they allow negotiation with the gangs. They're aligned with the gangs. And in effect, what happened is that you had a country where the gangs played a major part in how the country was run. I think we need to get to a point where we tackle crime head on, deal with the criminals, not negotiate with the criminals. I have a fundamental problem with that. I think the police, the law enforcement, have to be allowed to do their job. I don't think it's our purview to meet with criminals. Criminals are to be punished, not negotiated with. So yes, the tints are here. I really can't agree that they're helpful with respect to reducing crime, but I see that they have other benefits. And that's basically my intervention on that. Sir, thank you very much for allowing me the few minutes that I had. Thank you.
Really? Honourable member for... Who was? Oh, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
St. Thomas.
Thank you very much, sir. I just want to add a few comments and to lend strong support to the recommendation by the honourable member in this respect, the honourable member for St. Joseph and the Attorney General. And I am speaking from the background of what I'm recognizing in our society today, where we have so many persons that we know should know better. And the indiscipline is rife in every sphere of this society, and it bothers me a lot. I'm not saying that people should not have fun, that they should not have the luxuries that they would want to have, but when I look at where we have come from as a people, I believe that we have dropped the ball in so many areas, and the indiscipline in our country is now becoming rife until I hardly go anywhere at night because of my age, and of course the woman on the blogs dealt with me yesterday. I can hardly see at night, even though I'm wearing some tinted glasses, not too deep, because of what is happening in our society. And I think perhaps that the Honourable Minister would wish to, at a sooner date, treat to other aspects of what would happen with this road act that we are looking at to be able to correct some of the ills that we are witnessing on a daily basis. I know that in the past, discipline was the hallmark of everything in Barbados. And our senior folk who never went near a secondary school, who never had any free education except at the primary level, they had some standards that were so different. And they made sure that these standards were instilled in the household, in the village, in the schools, in the cities, wherever they went. There was this high standard of discipline for everybody. And now all of a sudden, all of the free education, all of the billions of dollars that have been spent in helping to make sure that this society conforms with rules and regulations and has access to the free education and the other services, we are making some serious steps backward as a society. There are still many of us in this society who stand up for righteousness and want to do what is right and to conform with the law. And so the indiscipline is showing up its ugly head in every sphere. And of course, our foreparents who did not have that free education that we speak about in the way that we do now have children and grandchildren that they cannot even speak to them about their indiscipline. And when you have to speak to children in the church, in the school, on the bus, in the village, on the streets, and you say, young child, what did you throw the wrapper there? He's the only boy you said doing it. And that is the mentality that is developing in people who got free education. I thank God I didn't get any except for primary school. But I believe that we can set examples from this honorable chamber and that we can reach out into the community, as I know we do, to help people to understand you have to conform with the laws of a country. And it is amazing that the strange things we do here, when we go over in other countries, we conform with their laws. But in Barbados, it seems to me that anything goes now, and too many people are breaching the rules. And so I believe that the role models in this society need to come out and speak more, need to come out and tithe more time, so that our younger people, and sometimes our older people, can get the understanding that they too must be sticking to the rules and the regulations in any society in order for us to go forward. So adherence to the law is paramount, and I believe that we can do more in our communities to help to build those standards. So we must, as a people, get back to basics, get back to love, get back to respect, tolerance, sharing, caring, tithing our times to be able to make that difference. Tithing our times in the faith-based institutions, tithing our times in the community, tithing our times in the schools, in the villages where we live, and I'm sure that Barbados will get back to a level. Everybody will not conform, but at the end of it all, we will see that there are others who are doing what they have to do to let this country be the hallmark of what stands up for righteousness and for truth. So we need to get back to basics, the love, the respect, the adherence to rules and regulations, tolerance, and things of that nature. I also want to say, Mr. Speaker, that I agree with this aspect of the legislation, and to indicate that I believe that we need to even go further in other aspects of what is happening on our streets and in the area of transportation and so on. And I will get to that in a minute in the interest of time. So this legislation calls for that holistic approach of Barbadians coming together, looking at the tints. Yes, I have a vehicle that has the tint as well. My grandson, he was quick to say, Granny, it is the law, and I'm going to go and get the one taken off the vehicle that I'm driving. And he did. So he led by example. It is just I'm not finding the time as I should, because I want to conform with the law. I cannot say that I am a role model. I am here in this distinguished chamber, and then I'm breaching the laws. I do not believe in it. And so I have a plan for mine to be done as well, but I bought that second-hand vehicle with the tint. But once it becomes the law, I too shall continue to do what is correct and follow the law and have mine removed. But the other things that I'm talking about the basic and the tolerance and the respect and adherence to the rules and regulations, and so I believe that that has to be more closely dealt with, and not only at the parliamentary level, but the entire society must come together and speak to the issues, and of course give that necessary guidance and representation in relation to conforming to the law. So I have a difficulty, Mr. Speaker, sir, when I see some of these things that bother me, that I cannot sleep, and I am wondering how can we overcome it. Fictitious number plates on vehicles. So one lady wrote me last week and said, Miss Ford, this is my car. And this is my number I had for years. And a man just passed me with the same car number. If that one car hits somebody, now you will hear, oh, that is Mary Jane's car. But it is a different person who has been driving it, and it creates confusion. The number plates are written in different digits now, or numbers, that sometimes you can't tell if it marked T1399, as mine is. It is, I don't know what you call those little fussy numbers. Nobody seems to want to conform, and it makes it difficult for persons like me in my senior years who can hardly see in the distance. And you're wondering, what is that car number that just passed me? I hope it doesn't hit anybody. And then the person doesn't have the evidence because they could not understand that number plate, or the number plate is cracked. and it's stuck with a piece of something, and so on. The lights, I don't know, are there photovoltaic lights? The lights that are now being put onto vehicles, that the adjustment is made after the person's by them. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know about you, but my vision is not so good at night. I'm farsighted, and therefore it is difficult. But you see these flashing lights in front of you. They're purple, they're orange, they're blue. They have all kinds of colors you cannot see. To my mind, this piece of legislation should have been extended to it, but there is time and place that we perhaps can have it done, because it is not only impacting on other motorists, but people who have vision problems, whether they are old, like me, or whether they are young or not so young. It is difficult to negotiate on our streets, especially streets that don't have street lights. It makes it so difficult and so complex to the eyes of those who are driving. So I believe that those need to be tackled as well. They're killing our vision at night and we can hardly see. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the horns. All of our time setting now, especially the public service vehicles, all day long, all night long. That is killing the hearing. That is killing the performance of others, especially if they have challenges and at night, and so you can hear it all through the villages and through the communities. For me, that is another matter. It should not have to come for legislation to happen in a society that has been so disciplined for so many years. But however, it is happening, and if you have to legislate it, then so be it, because I will lend my support to that as well. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, sir, is what now we call the boombox. So ordinary cars, I've seen a lot of little minis and so driving, and they're coming through villages at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and disturbing the peace. That is another one that we need to look at. I do not know how we'll be able to overcome some of the challenges, but we, the eyes and the ears in the villages, have got to do it, because I am not afraid. I am bold enough to call the police station, to call whatever entity, to say, T1399 has just passed and the noise is so loud. It is causing us not to be able to rest a little longer, having worked all night, or we are not well and we're being ill all day, and things of that nature. So I would want for the Honourable Minister, the Attorney General, to be able to let us deal with some of these matters, because if we do not legislate it, it seems to me as though we will not be able to get that good discipline and good order and conformity with the law, and so to continue to be the hallmark of what Barbados has been and what it should continue to be. Now, I'm going to come to conclusion, Mr. Speaker, sir. There's so many other little things I wanted to say, but the other thing I wanted to speak to is getting back to the basics, the love, the respect, the tolerance, the adherence to rules and regulations. We are not getting it right, and we must work on it. Not only us, the adults, not only parliamentarians, they're not the only ones who have morals, but there are persons out there, retired teachers, retired police officers, retired social workers, pastors and priests and so on, who are willing to assist, but some of them are afraid, because the first thing you hear, all is ever, making people think that's the old time days. And they go back to those aspects of it. But in the old time days, we were cohesive communities. We were born in poverty, and we shared, and we cared, and we guided. And this person was somebody's godmother, and the next person was some. And when you hear godmother is coming, you always make sure you conform with everything. We need to get into our communities and work, and let the young people know that boom, boom, those lights, the number plates, and the other aspects of what we are discussing here today, it is wrong, and we need to stymie the process of that moral decay. And so, Mr. Speaker, sir, I call for the legislation. This one I will support today, but I'm calling for the Honourable Attorney General and his team to start looking at other aspects of what is really weakening or destroying our society and destroying our people who really just want to get an ease and get a better understanding. The only final thing I want to say is to do with the PSVs, because they too need to be examined, and they need also to be able to conform with the rules. You see no entry signs, and they go through to pick up a few people. The bus stops are there, and they stop in the roundabout. And they're doing all kinds of strange things, and they're the ones with the boom boxes too, deafening you, and the cursing and the swearing, I mean everything that is negative, that I feel if we can do it as a people and not just the constabulary, we can make a difference. I do not want to hear of any police officer or any member of the defense force or any institution that has to ensure that the law is continued in the manner that it is designed to carry out their duties without fear or without favor, but to make sure that they stick to the rules and the regulations. I do not want to hear of any of them being beaten or any of them being stabbed or shot or whatever, because to my mind now it seems as though Barbados has just broken down into so many aspects of what we upheld as the moral values and the standards that it would be a travesty, let me say, for any of the members of those institutions to be threatened in any way or to be injured or even to be killed. The moral decay must stop, but we in here in this honorable chamber must be the ones to lead and to support and guide those who do not understand, because it's not only about a luxury, it is about living in peace and harmony and ensuring that everybody gets a piece of this country, a piece of the pie, to be able to continue to be faithful and true and honest and respectful to the laws and the rules and the regulations of this country. And so, Mr. Speaker, sir, adherence of the law is correct. And I believe that once we get into our schools, I will repeat that, because that is very integral. Once we get into our communities, once we go into the bus stands, because sometimes when I see these ZRs come through by me and they're running illegally up there, most of them, and I put up my hand, they think that I want to be able to get the bus. I said, sir, this is a neighborhood where ordinary people live in rural Barbados. Will you please take off the radio? And I am seeing that says Jackson, up here is West Mahal. If you come back, I will call the police. But the police can only do so much and no more. And other people need to let them know you are on the wrong path. We must adhere to the rules and regulations. So I agree with the legislation that is being put before us today. I believe it will help us to minimize some of the hindrances that we know and we see. And unfortunately, as I said, I will not like any member of the constabulary to have to stop one of those vehicles that the tint is so dark, and then somebody fires from inside of them or takes a cutlass out to chop them on the hand if they say, sir, and put their hand anywhere near it. They are special too. And I don't think we even have enough members of the constabulary that will be able to carry out their duties now that we are seeing so many changes in our society. And I know that the cultural impact is there, not only from Barbados, but there are other countries in the Caribbean where we are seeing so many breaches taking place, and it seems to be having an influence on a lot of our young people, although some of our older people are some of the ones who are not setting the example there, the persons breaching the laws as well. And therefore, I close, Mr. Speaker, by encouraging our citizens of Barbados, get on board and make sure that your communities, your societies are all safe. And if you have a good relationship with people, you don't have to be rude, you don't have to be disrespectful, you don't have to use any abusive language. But when we see that the breaches are there, and we said, boss man, I love you, you know, but you know what? See that thing there? It is too dark. It is darker than the black dress I have on if you're wearing a black dress. So you have to conform with the law. Do you have money to pay out? No, Mr. said, well, if you don't have money to pay, you can put it in the government coffers. I mean, it will help to put up a few signs on the road. Or it will help to pay some folks to help to do cleaning up around the street or so. And most of them will adhere by saying, all right, Mr. say here, even if they don't get to it. Or, sorry, sir, I heard. Even if they don't get to it. But at least the respect is there, and they know it is a breach of the law to have your vehicles tinted or to do all the other things that I have mentioned that are negatives, and our young children are watching them. They learn what they see others doing, and despite how many standards you want to put in place, if they feel, well, look, what they did is correct and I can do it too and get away with it, our young people are so vulnerable that will happen. And so I want to thank the Honourable Minister for bringing this component of what we are debating here today, but I also want, for as time goes by, to come with a collection of other aspects of what should be dealt with as a matter of urgency, because at the end of the day, we are here to guide. We are here to be able to set the rules and the regulations and the legislation, and once we carry out our duties, others will want to say, did you hear what Parliament debated? Do you understand that that is the law you are breaching? And more of us need to talk out, speak out. And we're not doing it. They say, see, he's going to be a criminal, you know. Look, he just gone through the red light. Look, he just gone through a no entry. But we don't say to them, star boy, come back. I love you, but star girl too, because some women are doing it as well. Don't do that. The regulations say, do you want to lose your taxi permit, your driver's permit, your whatever? And I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, that we will be able to make a good few strides into helping people to understand. And when we are all finished with this set of legislation here, we need, when we go out into the streets and into the various institutions and places, to talk to people, not just constituents, and we see the breaches, say to them, come back. I just want to take quietly. Go and take off the tent. Come back. You just went through the thing. Stop it, sir. Don't do that. And lady, you don't do so and so. And make a difference in this society. We can collectively do it. And once we do it right as members of Parliament and others in this society as adults, I am sure that our youth will want to tear a leaf out of our books. And at least it will appear difficult at first, but I'm sure that they will be able, over time, especially when they have their own children, to be able to say, I made that mistake when I was a child, but I don't want you to make it too. They will learn, according to my old deceased mother, by their mistakes. And so, Mr. Speaker, the youth is watching us. The youth are watching us. Let me say, 'cause I'm talking in a collective way now. They're watching us, the things we say, the things we do, and they think it is okay. And unless we put them on the right path, to let them know what you just did is wrong. There's legislation there. The last thing you want to do is to be able to have the officers come to your house to say you've breached the rule, whatever, and then the money you're going to pay out. And I heard one of the honourable members, I think it might be the leader of the opposition earlier, when he spoke about people having to spend the money. In the same way we can go and spend money to buy Remy, to buy false eyelashes, to buy boxes that are falling off our backs, to be able to buy jewelry and all that, we can use the funds to make sure we stay on the straight and narrow, and we will be able to be a more progressive society. But these examples have to be set, and the laws have to be put in place, and the conformity is what must happen. But I pray to God that our police officers will continue to have the life, the health, and the strength to be able to carry out their duties without any fear of anyone threatening them or anyone trying to destroy them, their health and their well-being, because they have to be stopped. They're driving a vehicle that is too tinted and the police cannot see. You can't see who is coming out with a cutlass from inside and pulling out to cut off. We don't want that. We must continue to be a peaceful society and make a difference in what is happening not only in the Caribbean, but in the rest of the world. And I believe once it's a collective approach, Barbados can rise again as a society where people are well-disciplined and productive, and we love each other, because God said you must love everyone as you love yourself. And that, sir, is my contribution for this evening in this respect. I appreciate it, sir.
Honourable Member for Michael Northwest.
Good afternoon to all. Yeah. Sir, I rise to add my contribution to this road traffic amendment bill. There are several countries that permit dark window tint. Though regulations vary significantly, in the UK, for example, sir, rear windows have no restrictions on tint darkness. Sir, some countries like Italy only allow tinting on the rear windows and rear windshield with no limits on the tint. Other countries, sir, such as Chile, are perceived to have more relaxed tinting laws, while others, like Argentina, have more strict regulations. Yes, and while many may conclude, based on the precedent set within Argentina, well, their strict regulations are as a result of a high crime rate within that country. I am of a firm belief that this fair land of ours, Barbados, should not follow suit by imposing such regulations on the people of Barbados. Window tinting is a popular automotive modification that enhances privacy, reduces glare, and provides the UV protection. Window tinting also protects the vehicle interior, whether it be the dashboard, sir, or leather seats, depending on what kind of upholstery that vehicle has, sir. UV protection, sir, involves minimizing exposure to harmful ultraviolet rays from the sun, sir, which can lead to sunburns, premature aging, and increased risk of skin cancer. However, window tint laws vary significantly worldwide, yes. The amendment to this policy shall not revoke the privacy to vehicle owners who are law-abiding citizens with 15% or 20% shade of tint, sir. It shall be mandatory that anytime a police officer of the Barbados Police Service who stop a vehicle that has dark tint, that the occupant or occupants of that vehicle, sir, shall lower all of the windows on that vehicle while the police officer is approaching the vehicle in order to maintain a level of transparency and safety to that officer. This suggestion is to ensure compliance with legal standards while still enjoying the benefits of tinted windows. Sir, in Texas, the front windows must allow more than 25% of tint for visible light to pass through. The back and rear windows may be tinted more heavily. Sir, dark tint have lower visible light to pass through. Suffice to say, sir, that you can have 25% of tint on your front windows and 20% of tint on your back windows. And the upholstery in your vehicle, sir, is fully black. And you can have all of your windows up. And no tint don't have to be on your front windshield, and your front windshield can appear dark, sir. And these are things that I experienced already, sir. Some vehicles are manufactured with built-in tint into the windshields and the windows of these vehicles, sir. So how do we, as a government, plan to control the importation of vehicles that are already tinted with 15% of tint or 20% of tint into this country? Certainly, this bill will not sit well with car importers who are trying to earn an honest dollar within this economy, car importers who will now have the onerous task of trying to source vehicles without tint. I don't think that the Barbados Police Service, who has limited manpower, should be consumed by tint on vehicles when the said Barbados Police Service knows who the real criminals are in this country. Furthermore, this tint issue shall be the responsibility of the MTW traffic inspectors or traffic wardens who are usually in the bus terminals maintaining order with the ZR drivers and bus drivers or walking the road controlling illegal parking. Sir, let the police continue to focus on more important criminal issues facing this country instead of redirecting their limited resources to focus on tint compliance on vehicles. This situation will cause some police officers who I know for a fact could create or cause harassment to some people who they feel like probably stopping on the road. And I know that police sir, I represent people and I am not supporting any police harassment over tinted vehicles. We can't paint all abiding citizens with the same brush, of the criminal elements. This government shall be strengthening and seeking to compete the implementation of the electronic vehicular registration system across Barbados. This government should be strengthening and seeking to tighten down on false number plates and tightening down on the registration of licensed manufacturers across this country. Sir, just a few weeks ago, we had a robbery outside this Parliament building by the bank next door. And the vehicle that was used in that robbery, sir, had on false registration numbers on the vehicle, sir. There is a need to strengthen the traffic division of the police service. We have a robust Road Traffic Act, but we must also give the traffic inspectors at the NTW more work, more power, and increase the staffing. This distinct policy will place additional burden on the existing traffic department, and the Barbados Police Service is already limited with manpower. And I beg the good Honourable Prime Minister to relook this policy, sir, and I oblige to you.
Honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank members who have participated in this debate. There are just a few matters that I would want to address. First, point out to the last speaker that this amendment was requested by the police service. This was not something that the executive dreamt up. The police have asked for this, and therefore, it must be a matter that is of some importance to them. In relation to the many criticisms by the leader of the opposition, it is evident that he has been living in a cocoon because he seems to suggest that the only thing that this administration is doing or has done about crime in Barbados is to bring an amendment to address the issue of taint. I want to remind the honourable member that this administration is not a one-trick pony. I know that he has not paid any attention to any of the things that we did in the 6 years that he spent on our side. He wasn't in Parliament half of the time. When he was here, he was in a daze. So let me remind him. Let me remind him that when we came to government, sir, there were 2 criminal court judges. We have increased it to 8. The number of prosecutors was about 8 or so. We've increased that number to just about 20. There's been an enormous improvement in the disposition of criminal cases. The DPP's office dispatched about 292 cases last year, 230 the year before. When we only had 2 judges, we would barely get 30 or 40 criminal cases done in a year. And now we are almost hitting 300 criminal cases in the assizes. We have enacted legislation to provide for stiff mandatory penalties in relation to firearm use, Mr. Speaker. The first offense, 10 years. Second offense, not less than 20 years, but up to a maximum of life imprisonment. We've passed a new bail act, Mr. Speaker, to tighten up the hinges on that revolving door that saw people going into Dodds, coming back out on bail, committing more offenses, back and forth, and terrorizing our society. We brought a completely new bail act that put the burden where the burden should lay, and that is on the accused person. We've enacted plea bargaining legislation to help to speed up the course of criminal trials, sir. We've enacted legislation to provide for judge-alone trials, another measure to make the system more effective. Mr. Speaker, the Barbados Police Service has a budget now about $145 million, more than ever in its history, sir. More than ever in its history. We introduced whistleblower legislation. Mr. Speaker, we talk about violent crime. Violent crime has been carried out largely by guns. But long before we came to government, the Commissioner of Police at the time was saying, we have a gun problem. Guns are coming in like crazy through the ports. He said so. He didn't wait till the Barbados Labour Party came to government to point this out to the country. He said it to the country, he said it to the last administration. We came to government and found no working scanners at the port. So how you can stop the guns from coming in? We spent millions of dollars to plug that loophole, and it is working every single day, Mr. Speaker. The leader of the opposition was generous enough to compliment the police service for the rate at which they are arresting suspects for criminal offenses. It is an impressive rate. Every day you look in the papers, so-and-so before the court, so-and-so charged, again, and again. You are seeing constantly on social media, wanted, wanted, wanted. These are things that did not happen before. All supported by this administration, because we've taken a view that instead of politicizing the police service, we should empower the police service. The leader of the opposition spoke about the military. The military? When his party was last in government, they had the military on standby. Since we came to government, we've had the military as a constant feature of our law enforcement program, as was evidenced by their significant presence in recent times. You're seeing them. They don't just come out of crop over and walk out behind the bands. So what we are doing today, Mr. Speaker, is not our solution to crime. We never said it was a solution to crime. We never said it was a solution to violent crime. What we did say was that we are noticing, the police have evidence, that a large number of vehicles used in the pursuit of criminal activity are coming heavily tainted. The police have said to us, I do not feel safe approaching a vehicle with taint. Are we to disregard these things now, Mr. Speaker, because the leader of the opposition feel that we should do more? Are we to disregard the legitimate concerns of police officers who work night and day to safeguard the people of this country? What if it was you or I? What would we be doing then? This is a legitimate request made by the police service. It is twofold. It helps to cut down on the risk of criminal activity, but it also serves to protect them. Mr. Speaker, this bill deserves the support of every single member of this chamber without fail, without faltering, without excuse. Everyone. But the leader of the opposition began by trying to suggest that this was a tax grab. I never heard anything so ludicrous in my life. He said the Prime Minister said that I want money. I want money. What's the context, Mr. Speaker? The context is that this administration from day one has felt that our legislation, Victorian as it largely is, or at the very least colonialistic as it largely has been, has emphasized criminalizing all manner of breaches. Everything that you did wrong, every time Master Crease, you go before the criminal court, you are charged, police have to come and spend time prosecuting you, and you are found guilty or not found guilty of an offense. We said from day one that it is not an appropriate feature for a modern Barbados. Criminal penalties should be reserved for truly criminal activity. And even the other member seems to accept that a requirement for taint should not be penalized by a criminal penalty. It should not be something that you're found guilty and possibly sentenced to 3 months imprisonment, because that is what the penalty is now. Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, sentencing somebody to 3 months imprisonment because you couldn't recognize them through a car window? That is what the penalty is, that is the penalty that is provided in the Act. For heaven's sake, this is a modern Barbados. But he seems to have taken the view, because the Prime Minister says she wants money, that expression was to say nothing more than, I'm not interested in criminalizing people. Pay a civil penalty. Pay a civil penalty. Nothing wrong with that. It is a modern way of doing things. And it will jump ahead, because the leader of the opposition argued that it is unconstitutional, that because it is a penalty, it means that the executive and parliament are impinging on the lawful responsibility of the judiciary. You know, a little learning is a dangerous thing. A little learning is a dangerous thing, sir. All of us as students of law understand the doctrine of separation of powers. All of us understand the consequences of the doctrine of separation of powers. But either the leader of the opposition knows, in which case he's being disingenuous to this chamber, or he does not know, in which case he should seek to know. Administrative penalties have passed the constitutional muster in the UK, the mother of our common law system. They have passed constitutional muster in Canada, where in most instances administrative penalties are now used instead of dragging people before a court. I refer the young member to the case of Gwendon against Canada, where the Canadian Supreme Court ruled on exactly that. And they asked, what is the criteria of a criminal penalty? They tried to look at, is this matter truly a criminal matter which requires a mens rea, an animus, an intention to commit a crime? Or is it that a mass decree should commit some failing? What is it? Is it about how you regulate conduct? Or is it about criminalizing activity? And the courts have said that in matters where you're looking to regulate conduct, where you're looking to say, don't do this, but do that instead, that it is not in the nature of something, it is not truly in the nature of a criminal offense. Because in a criminal offense, you talk about people getting charged, people getting prosecuted. You get acquitted of this. You are sentenced to imprisonment. And the courts in UK and in Canada have said, when you compare that to an administrative penalty arrangement, because it is an administrative penalty, because the penalty is fixed, because it doesn't require any individual to exercise any discretion, am I going to impose a greater penalty or a larger penalty, then it will pass the constitutional bar. The law is well settled. It's not my fault that he chose not to read it. He can read. We know he can read, but he chose not to read it. Mr. Speaker, he argued that this is exposing citizens to financial loss unfairly, unreasonably, and illogically. I remember as a young man when the Ministry of Public Works decided henceforth all vehicles must wear a seatbelt. You remember when you didn't have to have a seatbelt, sir? And then a seatbelt law was passed for the protection of Barbadians. And there were penalties involved with the seatbelt. Mr. Speaker, the penalties for the seatbelt back then are exactly the same penalties that we're imposing on today. No more, no less. And I remember all kinds of arguments against the seatbelt. What happens if you get trapped in the car? When the car stop, the seatbelt can burst your belly, all kind of silliness. You remember it, Mr. Speaker? Because nobody wanted to change the seatbelts. Because all of a sudden, you had to go and spend money to buy seatbelts and get them installed in your car. Nobody wanted to do it. So every specious reason was used why we shouldn't do it. Not so long ago, the last administration passed a law outlawing the use of cell phones in vehicles. And you remember the furor. There was what the old people call a human cry. For the younger people in the gallery, it is really a corruption of hue and cry. But the old people call it human cry. Okay? Now, Mr. Speaker, so many times throughout the life of Barbados and how we relate to each other, how we relate to the state, there have been changes in our legal framework. Have they been accepted? Not always. There's always somebody who says, no, I'm not changing this. Whether it is to do with health services, people are always pushing back. We just passed the Health Services Amendment, and people started to push back. People started to push back. Every time you change a fundamental in the system, people say, well, it can cost to conform. But what is the greater cost, Mr. Speaker? Is not the greater cost allowing things to remain as they are for the convenience of some? I believe that is the greater cost, Mr. Speaker. So, the honorable leader of the opposition wanted to talk about the poor lady who just strapped her children into the back seat and got to go now and pay this fine. Mr. Speaker, you are being given time. We talked about this in September. You've had more than enough time. As for the garages, we met with him too. And they said, well, AG, Deputy Prime Minister, we don't put dark thing in no car that we sell. We don't bring in no cars with dark tint. So whatever we do now is what we've always done, and we can assure you it will fall within what you have said. They've said that to us. Mr. Speaker, I thought that the leader of the opposition was struggling. I have a feeling that to say an argument is asinine would probably be close to breaching parliamentary rules.
I am in total agreement with you, sir.
And for that reason, sir,
do not go there then.
and for that reason, I will not say. For that reason, I will not say it, sir. But you have to ask yourself whether the honourable member is thinking straight when he says that if we want to impose a penalty on somebody, it should not be the owner of the vehicle, that it should be everybody in the vehicle. No, I have heard some absurd things. I have heard some downright idiotic things. But to say to the chamber that he does not find it acceptable that the owner of the vehicle, now the driver can't go and take the boy car, you know. Somebody might borrow a friend car, borrow the mother car, borrow the father car, and go and drive it both. But the driver has no control over that. If the driver has no control over that, how much less control does the body that he picked up from the bus stop have? Or the school children? The honourable member said everybody in the car should be, every passenger in the vehicle should be subject to the penalty. I would strain to think of anything more nonsensical than that. We are not seeking to criminalize people. We are simply seeking to have people make arrangements for the vehicles in a way that will conform to modern standards and the requirements of a modern Barbados. But he wants to go to what the Latins will call reductio ad absurdum. He wants to carry it to the silliest of degrees to suggest that it is an option for everybody in the vehicle to be penalized. You know, it really is an embarrassment. Mr. Speaker, I know that every time you impose a new standard, there's a cost component. Always is. There always is. We passed legislation in here today with recycling water. And for those individuals who have an involvement with it, there's going to be a cost component. Most things that government will enact will somehow or another affect somebody in their pocket. To a larger degree, though, we concede, because you're dealing with vehicles, and we have 100 and something thousand plus on the road, I believe, you're going to be dealing with a large number of people. But we have given them, we made the announcement in September, so they've had more than enough time to begin to adjust. Mr. Speaker, I am able to say to this chamber that these rules will become effective on the 1st of September, 2025. 1st of September, 2025. That gives individuals about 2 months to put their house in order. But in fact, that is 2 months from today. But we first made this announcement back in September of 2024. So we've really had a year. Towards the end of last year, we extended it. We said we're not going to do it until January. And then for one reason or another, various other priorities came in, and we are here today. Every Barbadian will be expected to comply with the legislation. The exceptions are laid out in law. They're recognized exceptions, and you know, if doctors are able to say, you do not need an exemption from tint, you need to wear sunscreen, so much the better. I'm happy. I would much prefer that. But neither the Deputy Prime Minister, who has responsibility for the legislation, or me as AG, are going to seek to get into the trenches with doctors, because some doctor may say, sunscreen is all right, but I prefer you to have a more shaded environment to keep out the sun. That is a matter for the medical profession. That's the matter for the individual and the medical advice that they receive. We've taken the more cautious approach by saying, if you certify that this individual has that and has a particular condition and they need to have tint, then we're comfortable. We will facilitate it. We'll give you the exemption. Now, Mr. Speaker, I hope that Barbadians over time this will be an issue behind us, very much like seatbelts were. But if a Barbadian goes to New York or Miami or wherever it is and get in a vehicle, they will get in a vehicle that is tainted with the laws of that particular state. With the laws of that particular state. If they go to England, they will get in a vehicle that is tainted in accordance with the laws of that state. Same thing for Trinidad, same thing for Jamaica, same thing for St. Lucia when they went to Jazz Festival 2 weeks ago. They will get in a vehicle tainted with the laws of that state. But we're being asked by some people to leave the law as it stood in its very subjective way, where people were not necessarily fairly trained. They talk about harassment. Mr. Speaker, the best harassment in the world would come when the law is not precise, when it is not capable of being measured. Because that's when you can get harassed. But if I say, I can't recognize you. I am standing up at a reasonable distance, I can't see your face. Never mind that somebody 10 feet behind can see it quite clearly. He's the prosecutor. He's the person bringing the charge. Harassment thrives in environments where you do not have precisely measured things. But when you have to pass the measurement on a tint meter, there can be no harassment. because there's a scientifically measured value that is capable of being applied. And if there's any doubt, go and get a second opinion. Go and get a second opinion. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that every single taint provider, taint installer said to us, I want to know what taint meters the police buying, because I want to make sure that I got the saint in them caught. That's what they said. I want to make sure I have the same thing that they have, so that we're all on the same page. Because I don't want that they test it and say it is X, and when they come and test it, is Y. Mr. Speaker, change is difficult. And we will try to find every reason in the book not to change. As a normative matter, it is important that Barbados brings its standards in relation to taint in line with the rest of the world. It is a reasonable and practical thing to do, and we need to get there. But it was requested by the police as a matter of great concern to them. And Mr. Speaker, I stand here to stand in the breach for the police. Because when they go and they do their work, and we are happy, we praise them. But when they don't get the success that you want, you curse them. When you go and hold people over there, you're happy. But when they come into your community, you're not. As I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, the police don't ask for much. And if we cannot give them this, then, Mr. Speaker, what message are we sending to them? Beg to move this bill be read a second time.
Question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor? Those against? You think the ayes have it?
Mr. Speaker, I beg that you do now leave the chair and that this House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that the Speaker do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those in favor? Those against? You think the ayes have it?
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Clause 1?
Beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
No, sir. Amend it. Amend clause 1, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that we amend clause 1 to reflect that this is amendment bill number 2. So the amendment would read Road Traffic Amendment number 2 Act of 2025. With that amendment, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that on as amended stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
Question is that clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee with one amendment.
The question is that I do no report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee with amendment. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The question is that I do no report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee as amended. All members in favour, say aye. Aye. All members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill with amendment. Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move this bill be read a third time.
Question is that this bill be read the third time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as a Road Traffic Amendment Number 2 Act 2025.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. And me think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Order number 12, in the name of the Honourable Attorney General, Minister of Legal Affairs, to move the second reading of the Supreme Court of Judicature Amendment and Validation Bill 2025.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I hope that this wouldn't detain us too long. We are seeking to amend today the Supreme Court of Judicature Act. The matter that arises has its genesis in a court decision called the AG against Durant, a case heard by the Court of Appeal and a decision given in January of this year. This case had to do with the power of the Supreme Court to make an interim payment in the course of civil litigation. An interim payment, Mr. Speaker, is exactly that, a payment made on account in the course of litigation to one of the parties, generally the claimant. This is a power that has been exercised across the Commonwealth, across all Commonwealth jurisdictions. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, it is a power that purported to have been exercised in Barbados, and in fact, it was in the course of the appellate argument, a case that I appeared in on behalf of the claimant, and in which I secured a significant interim payment for him, was cited as authority. But every now and again, sir, the court throws away the assumptions that have always been made, peers back the layers of law, and looks to see whether what they're doing actually has a solid foundation. And notwithstanding the fact that the Supreme Court civil procedure rules talked about the making of interim payments and how it should be done, the Supreme Court of Judicature Act did not give that power, the power to order interim payments, to a High Court judge. It is obvious that it was an omission by the drafters of the legislation back in 1979. But because the civil procedure rules and before that the Supreme Court of Judicature rules talked about interim payments, the assumption was made that the power existed. A number of cases took place, a number of cases were heard. We had an unfortunate instance where a judge ruled against the making of interim payments and then subsequently ruled for the making of interim payments. And in those circumstances, it was felt important by me as Attorney General that the law should be settled. You can't have a judge saying no interim payments are possible and then, ironically, the same judge saying it is possible. So if it was two separate judges, it would have been less of an issue, but I would still have asked to have the matter appealed. It was important that the Court of Appeal make it clear whether that power existed or not. The Court of Appeal in January ruled that the power did not exist. But the truth is, Mr. Speaker, that this power to make interim payments is so important in the course of civil litigation that it would be entirely unsatisfactory for us to have said, okay, and leave it alone. what was considered to be the most appropriate state of affairs, what was considered to be the most appropriate way of dealing with it, will be to make right the assumption that the power existed when the court found that it did not. And so that is why we are here today, to make sure that in an appropriate case, the court is able to make an interim payment. What's the practical value of this, sir? Mr. Speaker, there are matters in the Supreme Court, especially in relation to personal injury, where individuals need extraordinary medical attention, but they don't have the resources available to do it. Liability is not in dispute. And even if it is, there's a feeling that you're likely to win, and liability will therefore be resolved in your favor. In those cases, Mr. Speaker, the court is able to say, I am ordering the other party, often an insurance company, to make a payment on account of damages that you'll be awarded, precisely so that you will have money in hand to cover your expenses. And it is not just a matter of generosity, it is also an act which may serve to mitigate some of the ultimate cost to you. Because if you're able to assist an individual financially to get a surgery on their leg so that they'll be able to walk again and work again, then it means, Mr. Speaker, that you don't have to deal with a claim for loss of earnings for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So it is not only for the benefit of the claimant, it is also for the benefit of the person on the other side. It also impacts your obligation to make interest payments. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know that it is such a technical matter, but it is one that I support with the greatest possible enthusiasm. It is something that the courts have always assumed to have the power to do, but the Court of Appeal has found that we didn't. So all that we're doing today is to amend the Supreme Court of Judicature Act to say this power exists beyond a shadow of a doubt. Of course, Mr. Speaker, many payments will have been made over the years, and we don't want anybody coming back, though it is difficult to see how they would. But in a case where the matter is not completed, a party might say, the court was wrong to make me pay you. Give me my money. You get it if you win. So we're looking, it's important that we validate any payments that have been made. That is the nub of today's amendment. But there's one other small matter which has to do with the amendment of the schedule to the act dealing with the jurisdiction of the commercial court. When we established the commercial court division, the commercial division of the Supreme Court, in the schedule, Mr. Speaker, we set out a number of subject areas and pieces of legislation that would be the subject matter or the fodder for that commercial court. We neglected, though, Mr. Speaker, to include matters relating to the Companies Act. And therefore, we are seeking in today's amendment to have the schedule to that act amended to provide for matters related to the Companies Act to be heard by the commercial court. Mr. Speaker, those are the matters that call for today's amendment in this chamber. And I therefore ask that the chamber supports these matters. One of pivotal importance, the other one important but less urgent. And I therefore beg to ask that members support this amendment, and I beg to move that this bill be read as second.
Honourable for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me first, at the outset, say that I fully support this amendment, and I do that for several reasons. I don't intend to be long, but I think that this is a very important amendment. This is one of those times, Mr. Speaker, you know that I often say that Parliament could do anything. Parliament can go forward in time, but Parliament can also go back in time. Parliament can make what is legitimate illegitimate and what is illegitimate legitimate. And in this case, it is going back in time to validate actions that were done by the court several years ago, and for good reason. Let me also say, Mr. Speaker, that as the Attorney General said, it is vitally important, especially when the liability is obvious. And I think of a clear example, a police officer as a passenger in a police car. A police officer as a passenger in a police car. That car, and I'm speaking from experience because I was the surgeon who had to operate on this person. That car turns over and the person suffers significant injuries, including a fracture to their mandible. And that fracture has to be treated in a certain time. There is nobody at the Queen's Hospital that can handle the case, so therefore the person has to seek private care. In order to seek that private care, because unfortunately we do not have that care at that time for the oral surgery person to be able to sort it out, the particular mandible has to be plated. The person has to have a general anesthetic. They have to be in hospital for 7 to 10 days. You're talking about thousands of dollars. If that person is not treated and treated quickly to be able to get that procedure done, or has the wherewithal to pay for that, it means that the outcome of after treatment is significantly compromised. That's the first thing. So it means that the person then has a jaw that does not unite appropriately or unites in an inappropriate way, so the way they bite together will be changed forever. Or then they have to seek an interim payment, as the Attorney General said, and then you have to go in and refracture the jaw to be able to put it back into the right position. And of course, the success in those situations is much reduced and much more complicated. So having the opportunity for the person, and I go further, it may not even need to be, sometimes we need to consider having or making interim payments even before it has gotten to court, to recognize that somebody has suffered an injury, to recognize that that person does not have the wherewithal to get the treatment, to recognize that they may not even be able to get treatment in Barbados and have to travel to get that treatment. And if somebody who obviously does not have the wherewithal, obviously was a passenger, the insurances or the government or whoever is the person that the person is claiming against has to or should be able to access funds to get that treatment in a good and timely manner early. Because you and I know, Mr. Speaker, that sometimes to get before the law courts itself is years. And I know that this government has tried and done quite successfully to reduce that time. Of course, increasing the number of lawyers, increasing the number of judges, adding to the courts. Yes, we've done a good job, but it still takes years in Barbados. And we not only, what I'm suggesting, I guess, Mr. Speaker, is not only stop here at giving the judges the opportunity, but we need to look and encourage the insurance companies, encourage other people to recognize that if you know that this is something that a claimant will win, let us seek to first get that person that treatment, get that person that opportunity to be able to fix things early. Because in the medical field, the longer you wait, the harder it is, for several reasons. Not only that being the injury is older, it's harder to join things together. The person themselves is older. An older person has less success at treatments in surgery than a younger person, let's face it. They have other comorbidities that then add to the treatment. So all of these things tell me this is moving in the right direction. This is a good thing to do, not only for the judges, not only for the claimants, but for the average person to be able to know that if they're injured, if there's a claim, that there will be some action to be able to get them the best treatment in the fastest possible time, whatever it is. So I am in full support. I think we need to go further. I think that, I know that from a case management point of view, we should be looking at this even before it gets before the judge. I don't know if it's possible, but it's something that we need to look at. because it becomes very, very important for the viability of treatment for that person. With respect to the other matter from the companies, it's obviously a no-brainer. If it's something that we've left out, and you cannot be a commercial court and not have a major part of the Companies Act. That's obvious. And obviously that's something that we have to support as well, to be able to make, this government came to office, and Speaker, to make wrong things right. And slowly but surely, as they come up, as we find the deficiencies, we face them and we fix them, whatever it takes. And I think that is the fundamental seed that this government has shown time and time again. And it's not every time that we try to fix something that's going to be easy. It's not every time that we fix something that's going to be popular. But you come to government not only to make popular decisions. Sometimes you've got to make the unpopular decision to make things better in the long run. Having that helicopter view over what is happening all around you and what is happening on the international scene to make things better for our country as a whole. So I support this legislation, and let us go forward and make wrong things right.
Honourable Member for St. Michael's Office.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak rather briefly on this matter, but I could not, having started my legal career doing what we call the bread and butter of the legal profession, doing personal injury law, allow this moment to pass where my voice was on the record as supporting the Honourable Member for St. Joseph in bringing this amendment to this honourable place. I do so, Mr. Speaker, because I have seen the hardship, the challenges which individuals have experienced as a result of not being able, in some cases, to get interim payments in a timely manner. To the issue raised by the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, there are cases where the insurance companies would, based on the facts of the case, would in instances provide interim payments. So there is already precedent for that. But the difficulty has come in situations where I guess the matter may be contentious, more so, where there may be an issue of liability being in dispute, and the parties may, especially if it's against the state, we may find a situation where there's not necessarily a willingness to present the funds for the interim payment to be made despite the request from the claimant's attorney. As a consequence, it has resulted in significant challenges, not only for the individual, but it has placed a burden on the healthcare system as well. Because then you have people who are not able to afford the treatment through the legal mechanism, having to go to find mechanisms through the traditional system of healthcare. And it places a burden where obviously for people who are trying to get appointments at the hospital, you have people who have been injured badly trying to seek, free healthcare services or limited cost of healthcare services through the traditional system. So while this amendment seems like a simple one, the truth is that it has the potential to impact ordinary people. It has the potential to impact a number of claimants who for many years have suffered in silence. And of course, when you suffer in silence, it also has an impact on your family. It has an impact on the mental health of the individual. And it therefore has a wider impact on the productivity of a country as well. Many of the people who have not been able to access the interim payments to be able to get the necessary surgeries and the necessary interventions themselves are frustrated. They may still be working, but in many cases, that frustration of not being able to see light at the end of the tunnel for the settlement of their claim often results in them, taking that out, in a sense, in the workplace environment as well. So I think that this type of amendment, it certainly reaffirms the principles of justice, and certainly the principle of justice delayed is justice denied. And I support certainly the Attorney General in bringing this amendment. The thing though, Mr. Speaker, that I feel that I could not sit without addressing though is the length of time sometimes that the cases have taken to be able to be heard. We in the Cabinet of Barbados have seen recently an influx, and I know the Attorney General and the chambers are working to try to get the matters before Cabinet so that we can dispose of them. But you have a number of personal injury matters that have been going on for decades, and it is quite startling to see how long someone has had to suffer not just in relation to interim payments, but certainly in relation to the settlement of personal injury matters. And I know while we've passed the rules to be able to improve case management, the truth is that there are these long outstanding cases that have had a significant impact on the very claimants that have been part of the legal case. And I therefore would want to see going forward that we're able to perhaps just pull all of the cases and let us see how quickly we can dispose of these matters, because these people have their families, they have their lives that they want to get on with. And I feel it is very difficult when you see cases that have gone on for 10, 15, sometimes 20 years, coming before the cabinet, circumstances that are very difficult sometimes to comprehend how that individual has been able to manage without the interim payments and without any kind of settlement. Generally, the insurance companies may cover the costs, for instance, of the medical reports. They may even take an interim payment for special damages, which is the expenses generally that the person may incur. Obviously, those things help us to get a medical report before the attorneys or before the court quickly. But the pain and suffering of an individual should never be understated. And I really do feel that personal injury matters are things that create additional public health issues. It stops our productivity. And as I said, I've seen this firsthand in terms of people really dealing with these challenges, and whatever we can do to create some level of urgency in being able to settle these matters, I would impress on the Honourable Member for St. Joseph and his team to be able to so do. In other jurisdictions, making a decision on the interim payments usually causes one to reflect on whether there is a position on liability. So if the defendant, for instance, has already accepted liability, you might see that the case may certainly be processed a little bit faster in terms of the interim payment. The court, and our courts will also take these things into account. So it's not specifically stated in the legislation, but obviously they will refer to various rules in relation to being guided when they are going to make a decision on these matters. But the first thing is whether there is an issue in terms of liability that may need to be determined. There is also the issue of if the claimant is likely to succeed in the case, in terms of the judge being able to look at the facts of the case, and sometimes prima facie a case is made out that this matter will be settled in favor of the claimant, or that the percentage of liability may be apportioned in favor of the actual claimant. And therefore, the courts will take that into account as well. They will also look at whether the amount which is being claimed by the claimant's attorney is reasonable, because sometimes people want, an arm and a leg, when in truth and in fact, the courts will have to make a decision whether what is being requested is reasonable in terms of being able to have the defendant or his attorney pay for the interim payment award that is to be made. So overall, I think that the court will be guided by those key principles in making a determination as to whether to grant an interim payment, as is the commonplace in other jurisdictions, certainly in the UK, in order to make a decision in favor of a claimant. But again, I support the amendment. I think it is long overdue, but certainly a welcome addition in terms of the reform of the Supreme Court of Judicature Act, which obviously plays an integral role in the operations and the efficiency of the High Court of this country. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Question is that this bill be read a second time. All those who are members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting, the ayes have it.
Speaker, I beg to move that you do now leave the chair and that this House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those who are members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting, the ayes have it.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand par. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand par. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand par. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
The question is that clause 4 stand par. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 5.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 5 stand part.
The question is that clause 5 stand par. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do not report His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited the Supreme Court of Judicature Amendment and Validation Act 2025.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, we've come to the end of today's sitting. I therefore beg to move the adjournment of the House until the 10th of June at 10 a.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be adjourned until the 10th day of June 2025 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 10th day of June 2025 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.